Pacific Standard Time is a member-supported podcast from the San Francisco Standard.
Join today at sfstandard.com/member.
I need to tell you guys quickly that my kids really want to call it Psst. Oh. Whenever I tell them about it, they're like, Mom, your new show is called Psst. We've invited you here today onto Psst. Like we're telling everyone a very important secret.
I'm Jesse Alejandro Castro. I'm an enterprise reporter for the San Francisco Standard.
And I'm Emily Dreyfus, culture editor at the Standard. And this is Pacific Standard Time. We're a new show.
We have stories from all over the state of California, all the big battles that are happening here.
Prop 50,
housing affordability,
tech,
and immigration.
Which is what we're here to talk about today. The Trump administration has spent the year massively ramping up immigration enforcement, using ICE, the Border Patrol, and the National Guard in unprecedented ways. And as the state with the most immigrants, California has, of course, found itself in the crosshairs.
So over the summer, ICE actually set up California's largest detention facility in the Southern California desert.
And today on the show, we want to tell you the story of the mayor of this city, who finds himself caught between the Trump administration and the desires of a tiny town. His story is fascinating because it's about the California dream, the immigrant dream, and what power a local politician has to stand up to the federal government.
I'm not a politician, so I may not always speak in politicianese. I'm just a dude that's trying to help a town, to be better.
Well, this is exactly what we want to be talking about today. So.
Gabby, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Gabrielle Burbet, reporter and producer for The Standard. And I want to introduce you guys to this mayor I've been talking to, who runs a city in the middle of the Mojave Desert.
So my name is Marquette Hawkins, and I'm the mayor of California City, California.
Can you paint the picture for us really quickly of this city? I mean, how big is it?
Land-wise, big.
We are the third largest city per landmass in California. However, it is a small population.
Population-wise, not so big. There are about 14 to 15,000 people living there right now.
There is wide open space, wide open land, lots of parcels available.
And what is the land like? Is it good land?
No, I don't know. I mean, what is desert? What is good land? It's the desert.
Tumbleweeds and dirt. Most cities in California are overpopulated or have too many people and not enough land. We are the opposite. We have not a lot of people and too much land right now. But I'm trying to change all of that.
Are you from California City?
No, I actually grew up in Los Angeles in Compton, California.
And he first heard about California City when he was a kid, when his aunt read an ad in the newspaper for this place in the desert called California City.
It was a promise of new land, new homes, and it was an ad that my grandmother and aunt saw.
I'd never heard of California City in my whole life. Has this town been around for a long time, or is it something newer?
When his aunt first saw the newspaper ad, this was in the 1970s, California City was actually only a decade or two old because it was founded in 1958 by this developer who wanted to build a city that would rival Los Angeles. I love you, California. And the developer had really grand visions for this city. He built an artificial lake, he built a golf course, a central park, and his big selling point for the city was land and this idea that you could move to California City post-World War II and buy a lot of land.
It seems hard to believe that all these flowers grow from land that, in its natural state, is semi-arid desert. Without water, the land sleeps. With water, it leaps to life and supports an agricultural kingdom whose riches are enjoyed in every corner of the nation.
So right away, this plan does not work out very well because a lot of people don't actually want to move to the middle of the desert. And from its inception, California City is starting to feel like a failed experiment of California. But when Mayor Hawkins' aunt reads about the city in the paper, she sees hope.
So they put me and my cousin in the car and they trucked us all the way up here. That was my first experience to California City.
They don't actually end up moving there just yet. But California City sort of lingers as this promised land. It'll be another few decades before he makes it back to California City. And in the meantime, he has this whole life back in Compton. I found a video, and I'm curious if you can identify
Sure.
which one you are in this.
7 days a week.
A lot of people do think the guy that's in the yellow is kind of gyrating and pumping his body is me. That's not me. That is a good friend of mine. That's DJ Shakespeare. But yes, I was in a group called the World Class Wrecking Crew.
Whoa.
Like Dr. Dre.
Yeah, Dr. Dre, Eazy-E.
It was a DJ / hip hop group that included members that eventually went on to form N.W.A. And that was Dr. Dre, DJ Yella. Eazy-E was a friend of mine before he passed away.
He's actually asked to join N.W.A. and he says no.
Ooh.
I said no because at the time, man, they were broke and they didn't have a lot going on.
He's like, look, I'm not a billionaire rapper, but I am the mayor of California City.
Just strikes me that you almost joined N.W.A.,
Yeah.
which is like famous for fuck the police. And now you're in your position.
Who's to say I don't still believe that? But listen, I got pulled over numerous times, gaffled up, sat on the curb. Look, you know, I don't want to say what city it is, but this one officer, he didn't like me. And this is when I was younger, in my 20s. And I was on a date. So he pulled me over, sat me on the curb, took my date to the other side and said, hey, I just pulled this guy over the other night and he was with another girl. So I'm just saying, I mean, just code stuff like that. But I also have family members who are in law enforcement, who are police officers that I grew up with and I love them to death. So you take the good with the bad. You deal with the things that are before you and you take a very pragmatic and practical approach to these things.
So Hawkins left the wrecking crew and went on to build a life of his own. But he still found himself drawn to that pool of California City in the way his aunt did decades earlier. And in 2022, he moved him and his family there just to try it out.
But honestly, I had no desire to become a politician or to become mayor. I was inspired by a conversation I first had with my daughter, who, when we moved here, she's always been active in sports and a lot of different things. And she says, Dad, there's not a lot of stuff to do out here. Why'd you move us here? I said, well, there's a lot of land.
My kids hate doing stuff and they're totally feral, so they would love this situation. But I can understand why he was like, oh, wait, I need to give my daughter some things to do in this town.
Yeah, and it turned out his kid cares less about there's a lot of land and more about why isn't there anything to do in the desert. So Hawkins started asking around.
And the Parks and Rec director said, hey, we just don't have a budget for a lot of things for the kids to do. Maybe you can go to the council meetings and start asking questions. And I did. So I started just kind of taking things, on my own shoulder and doing some things, volunteering, helping out, buying equipment, changing the nets at the basketball courts.
But I imagine being a lone do-gooder one-man band like that can only do so much.
And that's exactly how he felt.
And then one day I had a conversation with the mayor and he says, well, if you think you can do a better job, then run.
And he ends up winning. So he's elected as the city's first Black mayor in November of last year.
California City Mayor Marquette Hawkins has some big ambitions for the future of the desert town. Over the past couple of years, the city has cut tens of local government jobs in an effort to get out of their multi-million-dollar hole. But the mayor's vision for 2050...
I knew that the city had some issues.
The California city that Mayor Hawkins inherits is very different from that of the 70s. It's gone through several boom and bust cycles of a couple industries. The first was prisons. In the 1990s, a private prison company built a detention facility in California City, and that became a big job booster. And then in the early 2000s, the private prison got a contract from California to turn it into a state prison, and the city became a prison town. But there was always this fear that maybe the town was too reliant on this one industry.
And the goal was to not be dependent on that facility as the sole employer and the sole revenue generator.
To diversify revenue sources, the town decides to bet on the cannabis boom that's exploding throughout the state.
Uh-oh.
But they end up losing a ton of money on that, and it nearly bankrupts the city.
And so when cannabis came in and made all these sort of promises, the city eventually, quickly realized that they were not going to come to fruition. And so that's when things sort of shifted back to the prison being sort of like the primary jobs creators for the city.
The private prison, which is run by a company called Core Civic, once again becomes the primary economic engine.
Oof, I know Core Civic. For years, they've been dogged by allegations of human rights abuses at all the private prisons and private ICE detention centers that they run.
Yeah, it's definitely a controversial economic engine for this small city.
But in 2023, this town is struck by misfortune again when Governor Newsom closes the California City prison and prisons throughout the state as part of his big prison reform push.
I have spent the last 6 or so months, not a gross exaggeration, assembled a team of experts to look at reimagining a 21st century criminal justice system.
By the time Mayor Hawkins comes in at the end of 2024, this town has been through both a prison and a cannabis boom and bust. There are no prison jobs, no cannabis jobs. It's in a really bad way.
Jeez. I mean, it sounds like this city is just kind of always betting on the wrong thing at the wrong time. Did Mayor Hawkins have a plan to fix any of it?
So one of the things Mayor Hawkins does when he gets to office is to actually act on an idea he has for this now zombie prison.
I had petitioned Core Civic to try and turn it into a training facility, HVAC, metallurgy, carpentry, police and fire training.
Oh, that would be a great idea. We really need that right now.
Yeah, so he's thinking, like, we're going to employ people to teach trade, and then we're going to teach people trades, and that is what we're going to do with this private prison. But before Mayor Hawkins is able to turn this plan into a reality, he starts to hear stories of ICE looking for ways to increase detainment capacity by reviving their zombie prisons throughout the country. So sometime in April, Mayor Hawkins gets a call from Core Civic, and they tell him, Mayor, we are going to reopen the facility in California City, and we are going to use it as an ICE detention facility.
And said, we have an order to hire, and we're going to be moving forward with hiring, folks.
What was ICE's presence in the city prior to reopening the facility?
Nil, slim to none. I mean, this is a town that sits, 7-8 miles from any sort of major freeway. I mean, you can literally pass right by it and go, oh, did I pass a city? It wasn't an active sort of ICE group coming in or anything, or folks in masks coming in to snatch people up. I'm from Los Angeles, that area, and Compton, all of that. I see the images, I see the raids, I see what's going on, and my personal opinion obviously is I'm not with that, and absolutely wouldn't want that here in California City.
Now, Hawkins might not want to see the prison turned into an immigration detention center, but he knows some of his constituents might. The city is split politically, 50-50 Republican-Democrat, and Hawkins knows some of his constituents will hear about the facility reopening and be furious. But some might welcome it as a pipeline for new jobs.
So what is his responsibility as the mayor of this city?
First and foremost, he needed to make sure that Core Civic was complying with the city laws. So there's like permits and licenses that Core Civic needs to get in order to reopen the prison as a detention facility. So he asked Core Civic for a tour. They give him a tour of the facility.
It was completely empty at the time, not a lot going on in there. Employees were still being trained at that time. So it was not a lot to see.
At this time, he doesn't know when Core Civic plans to reopen the facility. And then one day, he gets a call. But this time, it's not from Core Civic. It's from an advocate.
And they said, hey, Mayor, are you aware that the facility is populating detainees? And I said, no, I wasn't aware of that. And then, shortly after that, maybe not even 30 minutes later, I got a call from one of the reps from Core Civic. And they said, Mayor, we just want you to know that last night we started populating.
And this is when things start to really go off the rails for him.
I felt a deep, sinking feeling in my stomach because I know as a city we weren't prepared.
You can't finagle this somehow and throw up your hands and say there's nothing you can do. You're either going to be part of the problem or you're going to be part of the solution. There is no middle ground.
How it feels that you're going to go down in history as the leaders that let this happen. A concentration camp. That's why you're opening in your city.
Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it isn't still here. It is smog. I'm Pat Morrison, and I've been breathing LA smog for, a long time. Join me to find out how this airborne garbage finally changed and how it changed us, with scientists, innovators, comedians, politicians, and a gal who drove around LA with her convertible top down and her gas mask on. Smoglandia will be available soon everywhere you listen to podcasts.
My name is Gustavo Guevara Alarcón. I was born in Mexico City, Mexico, and you can just call me Gus because that's way too long.
Oh, okay. And Gus, where are you right now?
I am currently housed at California City Detention Center. I arrived here on August 29th. I was on the first bus to arrive here from Golden State Annex, which is a detention center in McFarland.
Oh, how long has Gus been in ICE detention?
Gus has been in ICE detention ever since he was released from prison last year.
Unfortunately, I have been under some form of incarceration for over 21 years, including ICE detention. And by far, these are the worst conditions that I have ever been subjected to throughout that entire time. On the first day that I arrived here, I was escorted into the facility. I was shackled on my waist, which also shackled my wrists, and I had my ankles shackled as well. I had developed a headache while I was being transported.
Gus suffers from migraines, which he takes medication for.
I let the nurses know that I needed my migraine medication.
And the nurses told him he would be seen by medical staff later.
Eventually, myself and the rest of the guys that I arrived here with were taken to one of the housing units. Upon arriving, it was very dusty. It was very dirty. You could tell nobody had been in there in a very long time. They had us go into the cells. While I was in the cell, my headache progressed to a migraine headache. I called one of the officers and told him that I needed to see medical staff because I needed my medication. He came back a few minutes later and told me that unless it was an emergency, they would not be seeing me.
Gus asked the guards for his medication again. Still nothing.
My migraine became severe to the point that I became nauseous. So because I was nauseous, I wanted to drink some water, so I walked over to the sink. When I turned the water on, the water came out very white and chalky. And when I flushed the toilet, there was a lot of rust and different little particles that came out of the water. And I knew that those are signs that that cell hadn't been used for a prolonged period of time. Because the water came out very chalky, I made the decision not to drink it for my own safety. The last thing I needed was to make my condition worse by drinking that water.
His first night in California City, Gus said he lay in his cell, holding himself back from throwing up so he wouldn't get dehydrated. And this treatment didn't just happen to Gus. More detainees reported the facility being just woefully unprepared in so many ways for them. People not getting their medications, not getting adequate medical care. They also reported cruel treatment by the guards, like being put in solitary confinement. Wow. Things got so bad that over 100 detainees went on a hunger strike a few weeks into the facility opening.
I sound like a broken record, but I'm always reminding them, this is a detention center. This is not a prison. All I'm trying to do is convey to them that under some of the worst conditions of confinement that I've been in, this does not compare to that. This is worse on a whole different level.
And had Mayor Hawkins heard about what detainees were saying about the conditions there?
He had, because pretty immediately, family members of detainees and community members started speaking out at city council hearings about what was going on.
City Clerk, roll call, please.
Councilmember Clark? Yes. Councilmember Creighton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hurls?
Yes.
And Mayor Hawkins?
Yes.
Thank you.
Hello, I have my mother here.
Hola. Estoy aquí para expresar
I'm here to express
mi preocupación
my worriness
de la apertura del centro
of the opening of the detention center in California City. My son, without notice, was transferred to this place. He shared with me that he was kept in a cell and they're only allowed to leave their cells for 10 minutes.
Mayor Hawkins, do what your political mentor, Reverend Jackson, would do. Reclaim your power, reclaim your dignity, and take a stand.
I've read your statements, Mayor Hawkins, about the center creating jobs, and I understand that there's a need for that here in this community. But what kind of jobs are we creating when they come at the loss of dignity?
So the jobs thing is interesting. Were some folks in the community actually in support of the facility reopening?
Mayor Hawkins told me that even a former city council member works at the facility. So it sounds like some people in town are hoping this new detention center can be the job booster that the former prison once was.
But for the people who are upset, are they asking him to do these kind of procedural interventions and sue, or are they asking for something more specific?
Their biggest ask is for Mayor Hawkins to shut down the facility because CoreCivic didn't actually have a business license from the city when they opened.
I'm deeply concerned and frankly appalled. If a small local business operated without a license, I have no doubt they'll be shut down immediately.
So at our council meetings during public comments, we specifically say that we cannot respond and get into a back and forth. However, if I were to respond to those, I would have to respectfully disagree with some of the comments in the statements because they were inaccurate, because she was trying to compare a business in town that is, let's say, an ice cream shop or a pizza place to a sort of quasi-government facility now, because that facility, they have a contract with the federal government. That is a higher level of jurisdictional control. There are supremacy clauses involved there that don't apply necessarily to, grandma's ice cream shop or Uncle Joe's pizza parlor. And I'm not dancing around it or speaking politicianese. It is what it is, what it is.
So what is Hawkins doing in response to all of this public outcry?
I talked to several advocates and Mayor Hawkins about this, and the answer really changes depending on who you ask about what a city can do here. So Mayor Hawkins doesn't have the ability to say, I don't want this to be used as an immigration facility because I don't like what ICE is doing. He just simply can't do that.
However, what I will say is we may sit there quietly and we may sit there and seem to be tacit, but we are truly working behind the scenes to understand what the issues are. So it's not like we've turned a deaf ear and a blind eye to the concerns that people have. But, we are truly limited in what we can do.
But what he can do, and what some cities have done, is they have found loopholes where private prisons like CoreCivic aren't complying with local jurisdiction laws. The first is the business license. CoreCivic's business license with the city was still pending, and they opened anyway. And technically, California City can fine CoreCivic for operating without a business license or while a business license is still pending. And advocates say that's something that Mayor Hawkins needs to ding ICE on.
We can look into fining them on a daily basis, but our fines are probably somewhere around $20 a day, if that. And with an organization, like that, in a facility that large, particularly with the charge of the federal government to open, that's lunch money.
So he's not fining CoreCivic for not having a business license because the license is just going through the approval process. But a source told me that the person who was supposed to review that license from the city had to leave the U.S. a while back because of her immigration status. And she right now is working remotely for the city planning department from India.
Damn, that's wild.
But then there's another issue, which is that CoreCivic doesn't have the permit to be an immigration detention center since they were a state prison when they first closed. And advocates are pushing Mayor Hawkins on that.
Is that a permit that would have been given by California City or by the state?
That is from the city. But Mayor Hawkins said at the time they first got the call from CoreCivic, they couldn't even find the original permit because the city's record keeping is so poor.
This is not an excuse, but we just had a major fire in our main city building that keeps records burnt down. We also have questions too. What was the initial relationship and contract with the private organization and the state? What role did the city play in that, if any at all?
The city did eventually find the original permit that lets CoreCivic operate as a correctional facility. But this is where it all gets kind of tangled. State law requires prison and detention centers to hold public hearings 180 days before opening. So because CoreCivic's permit covers correctional facilities, they needed to go through the hearing process for an immigration detention center. I obtained an email from before the facility even opened in which the California City Planning Commissioner told CoreCivic that their first hearing date was set to October. So that means CoreCivic opened the facility before that scheduled hearing.
Wow.
And the city still held that October hearing even with the center open. And now they're kind of just going through the motions.
Wow. So they're still moving through a bureaucratic process to decide whether or not CoreCivic can open a prison that is already open.
Well, now CoreCivic and the city are claiming they can remain open because of city permits from back in the 90s. But advocates are calling BS on that. Last month, they filed a lawsuit trying to get the facility shut down. But they also sued California City, saying that the city government basically let CoreCivic and ICE blow through various legal requirements. And just last week, some California City detainees sued the federal government over the alleged inhumane treatment at the facility, which CoreCivic denies.
This whole thing sounds like a big mess.
Hawkins agrees that it's a mess. He's kind of just throwing up his hands here and saying, look, this is a state law. Now it's the state's job to enforce this law. And I do think he's genuinely annoyed that the state is not doing anything. When I talked to him, he said that Newsom was leaving him twisting in the wind by keeping the state out of this fight.
And does he have any kind of jurisdiction over medical care or medical support for the inmates? Could he say you have to have a doctor going in and checking them out?
When he started to hear that there was all of the horrible things happening, he went in and he's talked to the detainees, he talked to the warden, he talked to the guards. But also, he's not there 24/7, so he can go in and then all of the toilets work.
Sure.
He's kind of always like two steps.
Yeah, a couple steps behind.
Yeah, he's kind of always like a couple steps behind, and he doesn't really know how do I get control of the situation.
So you're saying this is happening across the country. What are mayors in other cities doing who are in similar situations?
When we talk about bureaucratic hoops that ICE needs to jump through in order to open or reopen a private prison, it can kind of sound futile to say, why aren't you holding them to this certain small permit law? But mayors and cities and advocates are actually taking the approach of dinging ICE on these small jurisdictional infractions, kind of like a death by a thousand cuts approach. Leavenworth, Kansas, for example, is suing CoreCivic for not having the right kind of permit for their detention center there. And that lawsuit is making its way through the courts.
And there was also that ICE detention facility in Florida that Trump called Alligator Alcatraz, which got shut down because it violated local laws, right?
Yeah, so indigenous and environmental groups did successfully sue the feds over Alligator Alcatraz violating environmental laws. And when I asked Mayor Hawkins, why not just, for the heck of it, Core Civic is not complying with several things here, why not just sue?
Let's hypothetically say, okay, city decides it wants to take on a fight, with Core Civic and with the federal government. Well, we lose. We go insolvent. The facility is still there, functioning.
So it seems like if the local city government wanted to do something about it, they could. They're just choosing not to.
But it seems like California City is trying to take the long view that if they don't pick a fight and if they don't choose a side with the federal government, things will just work out for them.
But the irony in all that is that by trying to avoid a legal battle with the federal government because they're cash-strapped, they've just landed in another battle with the advocates.
I mean, we're not broken insolvent yet, but any kind of major sort of issue that is taken on could put us in that position. There will be a post-Hawkins administration at some point in California City. So we have to make sure that we're shoring up the city and setting it up to succeed and not fail. As a mayor, I feel as if every individual who works at that facility, who is detained at that facility, they are a part of our town. So part of my job is to make sure that they are protected and afforded every right of every citizen that is in our town and every right of anyone that, lays their head or works here in California City. So I will be watching. I will be asking for oversight. I will be asking when I hear reports of things going on that don't quite seem right. But this one little lonely little town with one little itty bitty mayor and itty bitty council who's already cash strapped, we're not going to be the ones to solve the entire immigration issue alone. This is a collective effort from a lot of people trying to figure this thing out. But the fight is bigger than California City.
What do you mean the fight is bigger than California City? Because for the people there, that is the fight, right? That they're there.
They're here and being housed, or happen to be housed, yes, in our city, but the mandate didn't come from us. What we believe is that the fight is with the state and the federal government, because again, there's an Akan saying that says, when two elephants fight, it's the grass that suffers. And right now, California City is the grass.
You haven't been able to see the mayor, but if you were to say anything to him, what would you want to say to him?
I would simply ask him to do what he can to bring some sense of accountability to this facility. Just because we weren't born in this country does not give Core Civic or this detention center the right to dehumanize us, and it doesn't give them the right to treat us less than. At the end of the day, we're not here under a criminal conviction. We're civilians. We should be treated as such. And him being the mayor of California City, I would ask him to do what he can. I know that he's not the president. I know that he can't shut this place down, but he can bring some sense of accountability. At the end of the day, this facility is in his city. So he cannot say that his hands are tied, because that is not true. I would just implore him to help us.
This episode was reported and produced by Gabrielle Burbet and edited by Matt Collette. The rest of our team is Eddie Sun, Michelle Lands, and Sophie Behrman. Music by Carly Bond, Bear Attack, and Blue Dot Sessions. And we're your hosts. I'm Emily Dreyfus.
I'm Jesse Alejandro Cottrell. And I think we got to mention that this is first episode dropped on November 19th, the best day of the year, which is also both of our birthdays.
It's so weird that it's both of our birthdays. So happy birthday to us and happy birthday to the show.
And if you haven't gotten us anything yet, you can support the podcast by subscribing to The Standard at sfstandard.com/member.
See you next week, and thank you so much for listening.